So, you know what day it is? It's New Gun Day. Let's go. What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the channel, and as promised, I have something new for y'all. What, you ask? Well, this. What is it? It's a Walther, as you can see, but specifically it's a PDP with the full-size frame and the 4.5-inch barrel. And today we're going to take a quick look at it, do a first impressions, and then we're going to talk a little bit about why this Walther in particular is a little bit more special than other PDPs that have come before it. Okay, let's get started with the case itself. The first thing you're going to notice is that this case is huge compared to other gun cases. I can't even get it completely in the frame. But anyway, it's got the Walther branding on the front here, as well as it's got these like raised sections kind of on the bottom and on the top that echo the slide serrations on the PDP itself. Opening it up, we've got a bunch of stuff in here. Up on top, we have the usual Walther paperwork and the cable lock that no one uses. Just south of that, we have some grip modules that are interchangeable with the one that comes on the gun to tailor the grip to the shooter's hand just a little bit better. Then we've got the two magazines that come with the weapon. They have metal bodies and plastic base plates, and as others have noted, they look like they're made by Mekgar, even though they're not marked as such. They've got blue followers too, so they're more easily distinguished from other mags that you might have in your case. Both of them hold 18 rounds, and Walther also includes this mag loader as well, which aids in loading mags at the range. In this little baggie, we've got a chamber flag that I already took out, as well as the tool for the screws that hold the optic plate in, and this tiny little tool right here that you see, that is for adjusting the elevation and windage on the sights that come on the gun. All right, now for the PDP itself. It's worth it to note here that the PDP comes in two different frame sizes and two different barrel lengths, and that's how they're referred to. The frames are either compact or full-sized, and the available barrel lengths are 4, 4.5, and 5 inches. As I mentioned earlier, this is the full-sized PDP frame with the 4.5-inch barrel. This puts it at about the same size as a Glock 17 for reference. I thought this would be a good middle ground since there are so many models to choose from in the PDP lineup. All right, now that we've got the gun out, let's do a quick safety check. We've got no mag in it, and we've got nothing in the chamber there. Okay, so now doing that safety check, that brings me to one of the most prominent things that's on the gun, and that's the slide serrations. Walther's really proud of these. You remember they put them on the case. They're calling them super terrain serrations, and they're very prominent. They're very easy to use, both front and rear. For me, it looks like Walther started out with like a really big, chunky piece of metal for the slide and just machined out these pieces for the serrations and here along the nose to make it like a lot slimmer and to make the serrations really prominent. They've also chamfered the sides here, I don't know if you can see that, on the front and the back so that they don't really cut into your hand when you're using them to manipulate the slide. Another of the new features we have is the grip texture. Walther is calling this their performance duty texture, and it's a really interesting texture that's pretty smooth when you brush your hand across it, but it comes really nice and grippy when you firmly grip the weapon. Speaking of gripping the weapon, Walther also added this small angle at the base of the grip that's supposedly designed to help the weapon point more naturally with a slide-mounted optic on it because you can get some more torque with your pinky on it like that. One of the best parts of the PDP is the trigger. Walther is calling this the performance duty trigger, and it's an improvement or evolution of the PPQ's already very good trigger. For the PDP, Walther says that they have shortened the travel and made the break more tactile. So we'll check that out here. So we've got just a little bit of take up, a nice solid wall, and a really short break. We'll run the slide, and there's your reset right there. One more time. So reset, break. Really short travel, really nice. Okay, let's take a quick second to measure the weight of the trigger here. So I've got my trigger pull gauge. Put it on the bow of the trigger here. Got just under 6 pounds for that one. One more time. That one's just at 5.5 pounds. And we'll do one more. That one is also right at 5.5 pounds. A couple other notable features of the PDP is a full-sized pick rail up here on the front with a couple slots on there. And the sights themselves are polymer 3-dot sights. There you go. And these are notable because they are adjustable for windage and elevation here on the back sight. Okay, and now that brings us to what is, for me, one of the most notable features of the PDP, and that is that it comes optics ready from the factory. I saved this part for last because there's been a little bit of controversy about the PDP and its optics cut, and I wanted to point out how Walther has changed the PDP to address that. The PDP mounts optics by the use of adapter plates that are provided by Walther, which interface with the cut in the slide that's under this plastic cover. Actually, you know what, we'll go ahead and take this plastic cover off now because under it is what I think is the most significant part of this version of the PDP. Okay, now that the cover is off, one thing that we see right away is that the cut for the optic is really deep. I mean, you can see that there. It's so deep that the striker channel right there is actually partially exposed. We also see one of the biggest changes that Walther's made in the newer versions of the PDP, which is these load-bearing sections that have been added to the optic mounting area. Now, when the PDP first came out, there was a lot of complaint in the shooting community that the optic cut was completely flat here, which meant that there was no interface between the slide and the optic plate. This meant that all of the forces on the optic and the plate caused by the recoiling of the slide were being borne by just the screws holding the plate on. Eventually, these screws would fail since they're not designed to withstand shearing forces or the front and back motion, and owners would end up with their optic falling off and some broken screws that you'd have to remove from the slide somehow. Walther listened to these complaints, and the newer models of the PDP, like this one, have these cuts that now allow the slide itself to help absorb some of those forces that are being exerted during recoil. Most notably, we've got the large center spine here that supports the optic against side-to-side forces, and we have these two cutouts here that interface with the mounting plate lugs to support against fore and aft forces. Speaking of that plate, Walther has redesigned that as well to work with the new optic cut. Most notable are the addition of these lugs here on the bottom that interface with the slide to mitigate those fore and aft recoil forces. This thing is still made of steel, it's still free from Walther, and you still need to contact them after your purchase to get the plate that matches your optic footprint. This means that new owners still have to wait a while before being able to mount an optic to this weapon. Mine took about a week total, which isn't bad considering that I submitted the order on Friday. And that is my first impressions of the Walther PDP. Next up for this thing is a trip to the range to get some rounds through it, and you guys will see that in my 100-round range review coming up pretty soon. After that, we're going to start adding mods to it, because you know I can't keep anything stocked for very long. If you're interested in that, and you should be, make sure that you're subscribed and make sure you got that bell rung. As always, check the description for a link to Brownells where you can find the PDP and all the accessories that I'm going to end up throwing on it. There'll also be a link in the description to the Practical Tactical blog, which has more information and articles that I think you're going to find really interesting. That's all I've got for you today. So until next time, stay safe.